readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears. Hello and welcome to the channel today. I am Will and this is my brother Ed, and today we're going to be talking about 20 historical fiction books that we would like to read in 2023. So this is our priority historical fiction TBR. We put a little vote on the community tab of our channel a little while ago and a lot of people wanted us to do this. So of course we'd love to talk about historical fiction. We'll always take the opportunity to do that. So yes, as I've said I think twice already, this is going to be about 20 books that we want to read in 2023, and I've cheated a little bit. I don't know if Ed has, where times I've counted this series as one, so they're one entity.
Oh, Will.
But do you want to kick us off, Ed?
Cheating.
It's not cheating.
As a stats man, that must pain you, surely.
Not really.
Really?
No.
Wow. So when you bend the rules, it's okay.
Yeah.
That's alright, as long as we know. The first one for me is Dorothy Dunnett's House of Niccolo. I know everyone tells me to read either King Hereafter by Dorothy Dunnett or the Lyman Chronicles first, but I'm more of a 15th century Italy guy. It's what I like to read about. And Niccolo Rising is all about, well, the House of Niccolo is all about the character of Niccolo in 15th century Italy, so that is right up my street. I love the 15th century, I love the medieval Italy, and it's a period that really fascinates me, and I've heard that Dorothy Dunnett's writing is absolutely superb, the way that she crafts characters and immersion, and those two things are the main things I'm looking for when I read historical fiction, so I'm really looking forward to reading some of this person's work.
Very nice. Dorothy Dunnett is heralded as one of the best historical fiction writers out there, and I might as well get the cheating over and done with, and so I've included the Boudicca Quartet as one. I've already read book one, it was my final read of 2022, but I plan to read the next 3 instalments in 2023. I more than plan it, I will do it. I cannot not do it. I solemnly vow.
Will you make the unbreakable vow?
That's a bit risky. I mean, always, why would you willingly do the unbreakable vow?
To prove that you love Boudicca.
Yeah, but it baffles me, because there's always risks. You never want to take that.
What's life without a risk, though?
Well, I know what your motto must be then. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading these next 3 books. Dreaming the Eagle is an absolutely incredible read. I think we may have a review of Dreaming the Eagle coming onto the channel at some point.
Maybe.
But maybe not. Maybe I'm just fabricating that myth. But yeah, this is Boudicca. I'm really looking forward to reading this historical fiction. I was about to say it's historical fiction, but that's kind of given away by the video that it's in. So yes, it's about Boudicca, who, if you don't know, was a woman who led a resistance against the Romans in Britain. Yeah. And this is about it goes a lot to the initiation of kind of that conflict, a lot into the past. It's a Bildungsroman, it's a coming of age story for Boudicca and her brother Ban, and they're 2 incredible leading perspectives, and I cannot wait to follow them, or hopefully follow them.
And I think Boudicca is probably the most important and fascinating female leader probably ever. She's the greatest female queen to have ever lived. And
also there is a character called Caradoc, who Winston Churchill called the first great British general.
I thought you'd be quoting.
So whatever you think of Churchill, well, he thought a lot of Caradoc, and dates back to that foreign history. Well, I think he was pretty good at his history. Whatever you think of the man himself.
Yeah, definitely. And the next one for me is I'm going to be looking at a little bit of the late 18th and early 19th century, and I will be reading Simon Scarrow's quartet about Wellington and Napoleon. I've for some reason got, I think, book 3. That's the only book I've got. I think I picked it up at a car boot once upon a time. But I will be getting Young Bloods, which is book 1 of this quartet, and it's focusing on, as the title suggests, when Napoleon and the Duke of Wellington are young men learning their craft, growing up. And I think, well, from the reviews I've read of this series, is that Simon Scarrow has a fantastic way of interweaving both of those characters. There are 2 POVs from those 2 characters. I don't know enough about that time period, really. I'm just starting to maybe my renaissance of the Napoleonic Wars. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out. And what better way to learn than to read some historical fiction? Obviously, authors always take a little bit of liberty. Excuse me, in terms of the story, because obviously if you read Bernard Cornwell, then you'll be very familiar with that. But it's no reason to not read it, and I'm sure Simon Scarrow will weave a very interesting yarn about these 2 very important figures in history.
Very nice. And then next up, I have a Western, because on the channel a little while ago, we posed the question, do you consider Westerns to be historical fiction? And the vast majority said that they do. So I'm including some Westerns in this list here. And I have True Grit, which, if you do not know, has been adapted. I think there's 2 different adaptations. There may even be 3.
There was a True Grit 2, which they made up after with John. I believe John Wayne's in True Grit. Yeah, a second part of it. But there are two true. There's the original adaptations.
John Wayne one, and then there's the more modern Matt Damon, Jeff Bridges, and who's the
Hayley Steinfeld.
She's brilliant in it. Absolutely exceptional. So I love the films. Think they're brilliant, and the family, the whole Gwyn family, is a huge fan of the book as well. So I need to join that bandwagon. And Western is historical fiction, and I'm really looking forward to reading this. The Westerns that I have read that I absolutely love, particularly the very quirky nature of the characters and how it is a lot about those character relationships and kind of the relationship with the land around them. And also a sense of belonging as well, isn't it? And so I find that really, really interesting, and I'm hoping that True Grit can accomplish that. And I've also heard that there's quite a bit of humour in here as well. So hopefully it can make me laugh out loud a few times along the way.
True Grit is one of the funniest, but it's also the smoothest book I've ever read. I read it in about 12 hours. It's absolutely fantastic. This is not an ASMR channel. So yeah, I think True Grit is probably a Western I would recommend the most to any readers who haven't read a Western before, because the prose is so engaging, the characters are so brilliant, and the action is really used for the plot, and it's so exciting.
Very nice. And now I've talked about that, and also unleashed my first terrible joke of the day. Let's go back to you.
Well, it's quite an achievement that it took you a few minutes to get there.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, well done.
Brotherly love.
Brotherly love. And the next one for me is going to be Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I have to read this epic trilogy, don't I, at some point in my life, so why not make my mission of 2023 to read Wolf Hall? I've heard it's probably one of the greatest books ever written. It's got monumental reviews, and it is apparently a great masterpiece. Hilary Mantel unfortunately passed away, didn't she, last year? But Wolf Hall is a trilogy about Thomas Cromwell in the 17th century. Is it 1600s?
No, 1500s.
Yeah, it is 1500s because it is around the time of the Tudors, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, again, I don't know too much about that period of history. Usually I get to the 15th century, and then once the Battle of Bosworth is over, I'm like, well, I'm done now with my interest. But Wolf Hall is meant to be an amazing book.
Do you plan for just book 1 or the whole trilogy?
We'll see how it goes, but if I enjoy book 1, I'm sure I will love to read book 2 and 3. But Will told me it's a book that I need to kind of digest slowly, so rather than binge read it and try and get through it as quick as you can, try and take your time with it and just enjoy those small character moments. When we had our chat, our first interview on the channel was with Adrian Selby, the great grimdark fantasy author. He said that Wolf Hall was one of his favourite books. It had these minor character moments that just made him really appreciate how someone is at the top of their game in terms of their writing craft. So that's...
Thomas Cromwell is probably one of the greatest crafted characters of all time, and that's just in book 1 that I've read. So I can't even imagine what she does in book 2 and 3.
Nice.
So there we go. Next up I have some different historical fiction. That is Shogun by James Clavell. And so it's pretty self-explanatory what this is about. It's set in Japan. It's about kind of that Japanese history. It's written by James Clavell, a very renowned author. And Shogun is probably one of the most famous historical fiction books out there. And it's a favourite of yours as well. And as you can tell from the size, it could be labelled as an epic. Do you think that's a fair summary, Ed?
It's pretty epically big, isn't it?
It is epically big. And you said that the characters in particular are brilliant and the political machinations are excellent.
Yeah, and the way that James Clavell crafts the characters as well as the Japanese land and the people as well, and that the perspective is from a foreigner in those lands, and it all feels very alien to him, but soon he quickly gets a hang of it and starts to see the beauty of Japan. That is fantastic, and I absolutely love the heartbreak that he brings into this tale, because there's a lot of it.
Very nice, Ed.
And the next one for me is The Searchers by Alan LeMay. Alan LeMay is a very renowned Western writer, and I'm sure lots of you have heard of the film The Searchers, starring John Wayne. I believe it was mid-1950s that film came out, and it's got that iconic shot of where John Wayne rides or walks out of the open doorway, and it's just the camera shot is just him walking into the distance, which is a really, really famous shot, and it's been used in many, many films such as Kurosawa films as well as Tarantino films, so I'm sure you would have seen that shot. But anyway, The Searchers is a tale of where a girl, it's based on the Cynthia Ann Parker tale, but a young girl gets abducted by a band of Comanche, which are a Native American band, and then there is a chase where two characters go and try to rescue her. So I've read a few kind of captured by Comanche or captured by Native American band narratives in the last few years. And, one of them is where the one type of narrative is where, the character is indoctrinated into the tribe and they start to love it and they find it hard to take their way back into Western society where they are used to living that Native American lifestyle. Another one is the vengeance kind of trope, really, where the characters are trying to rescue someone. So that I'm looking forward to reading something from this type of narrative. And apparently it's an amazing book as well. The Searchers has aged really, really well. From what I've seen on the ratings and reviews on Goodreads, and I'm sure as a Western fan I will enjoy it.
Very nice, so that sounds really interesting. And next up I have Warlord by Bernard Cornwell, the final instalment of the Saxon Stories. 13 instalments, 12 previous instalments have built up to this. I've read 12 and now the final one to get to the final journey, the final escapade of Uhtred, son of Uhtred, of Bebenberg.
Nice.
Bernard Cornwell, he's a writer. Whilst there are peaks and troughs in this series, as at times it follows a bit of a template, he is an exceptional writer. He provides brilliant characters, really accessible, easy prose, brilliant action sequences, and just so much for an engaging and entertaining read. So even on those lower moments, it's still enough to keep you going, because Uhtred especially, I think he's one of the best characters of all time as well, because in every single instalment, even though at times I thought there's weaknesses with the antagonist or kind of the plot in that sense, Uhtred always has an element of growth, and throughout these 13 books, Bernard Cornwell has just brilliantly managed to not overdo the character growth, but he's managed to allow something to act as a catalyst for change in Uhtred every single journey we take with him. So I'm really looking forward to this final instalment, and you and Papa Gwyn both said that it
ends really strongly. So the few books before this one I was a little bit disappointed in, but it ends fantastically because it really does take the Saxon Stories into a whole new direction. It's a worthy and fitting end, 100%. The next one for me is a book I've mentioned on the channel before, quite recently, which is Aztec by Gary Jennings. It's an epic set in Mesoamerica, and it's a time when the Spanish have landed in Mexico, and people, and obviously the Westerners are then mixing with people from Mexico and Central America. And it's meant to be a monumental book. It's meant to be an epic book as well, telling the story of the Aztec peoples, and it's meant to be phenomenal from what I've heard. Again, and seen on, obviously you can see that I get lots of my inspirations from Goodreads, and Goodreads really is shining light on this book, saying it's a fantastic book. Quite a few people have a few niggles about it, but that is going to happen with any book, isn't it? But it's meant to be a great book. I haven't read anything from this time period before whatsoever, really. I read a fantasy called Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is set in a similar world to that world before, but pre-Columbian Americas. And I love the world building in that. I absolutely love, well, Stephen King doesn't like that term. Did you see his tweet recently? But did you not? I have to have a look at it. But I really love the way that Rebecca Roanhorse crafted that world, and I love how fresh it was. So I'm looking forward to reading again something very fresh, as opposed to kind of the usual Western books that I read.
Very nice, Ed. And next up, I'm going to say one that I've not got physically, which I need to buy, and that is Killer of Kings by the Matthew Harvey. I've read 6 books by him, I believe now, and every single time it's hit the mark, and Matthew Harvey has proven that he's an efficient, consistent writer who were always given an entertaining story. And so Killer of Kings is the 4th instalment of the Benicio Chronicles, and so I'm looking forward to, after quite a big break, returning to Bearbrand, because whilst I've read some Matthew Harvey recently in the shape of A Time for Swords and the sequel A Night of Flames, I've left Bearbrand for a while. I think of Blood and Blade I've read probably 8-9 months ago, so it'd be good to be back with him in the series of the Benicio Chronicles.
Very nice. And the next one for me is a Booker Prize winner by Peter Carey, and this is The True History of the Kelly Gang. So this book is it's a chronicle told by Ned Kelly himself about his time, about his life, really. So, and it is the story of Ned Kelly and the infamous Kelly gang. So this is 19th century Australia, and it reads apparently like a great Western, a great American novel, because it has many of those similar themes as well. It has an outlaw on the run, and it's told from the perspective of the outlaw. So obviously I'm sure that you see lots of sympathy from their side, as opposed to the detectives and the police and all that kind of stuff, all those people trying to find them. Ned Kelly is a bit of a cult figure in Australia, and he's a very, very important person, especially in the history of Australia. And I'm really looking forward to reading more and more about him, because I don't know that much about him, his life, and the gang as well. So it's going to be really exciting for me. As it reads like a Western, again, I'm sure I will absolutely love it. As it won the Booker Prize, there's another Western that I've read that won a fantastic award, which is Lonesome Dove. It won the Pulitzer Prize. So we will see, as I'm sure, how much I adore it.
I'm sure you'll be talking about it quite a bit on the channel when you get around to it. And next I have Con Iguodon. Of course I have to have some Con Iguodon in this video, and it is Lions. So he wrote ancient Greek duology, which consists of the Gates of Athens and Protector. And then it's loosely linked because it's some of those main characters in the first duology. They're children, but it is an entirely separate series, new story. You don't have to have read the previous ones. But yeah, this is Lion, and it says on the background that Pericles rushed down the gloomy corridor. War was never fair. And there's a bit longer of blurb, but I won't waste the time by reading all of that. But yeah, it is about the very infamous
Don't be
figure
deprecating, Will. Yeah, it wouldn't waste our time.
Okay, but I won't. If we read all 20 blurbs, we'd be here for about an hour. But Pericles, a very famous ancient Greek figure who was integral to the kind of section of the wars of the Greek states. And so yeah, it's a bit of history that I vaguely know a little bit about, but there's a big gap in my knowledge really, and so I'm looking forward to having that partially filled with Lion and the sequel, which is coming out called... what's the sequel going to be called? It comes out this year, doesn't it? We did mention it in our 2023 releases, but I don't remember now. But anyway,
it's by Con Iguodon anyway.
It's by Con Iguodon, and of course, as Ed said, a lot of historical fiction authors there have to take a bit of liberty to make a story engaging and kind of warp the story to fit kind of the narrative. But overall, Con Iguodon, I really enjoyed the previous two, and apparently they're pretty authentic, and he listed the name of his sources in the back as well. So it'd be interesting to do some wider reading if this really...
I love it when historical fiction books have those sources at the back, because then you can go, like Shawnee Lawless did in Children of Gods and Fighting Men, even though that's
and
historical
we still
fantasy,
need to get to it, don't we?
she still had kind of a glossary or a list of books to go and do some wider reading at the end, which would shed a lot of light on that time period. The next one for me is, and I'm going with a bit of a Western theme here, but this is this is by James Alexander Thom, and it is about the life of Tecumseh, who was a Native American Shawnee chief, and it's called Panther in the Sky. It's a little bit of a biography of this chief's life, so I'm really, really interested to read it. It's set in the 18th century, quite early 18th century, so early 1700s, and I love a novel that takes someone, it's a coming-of-age story, and it takes someone's life all the way up to the end of their life. You really grow attachment to the character. It's quite a big, chunky book with very small writing. It's about 750 pages, and I've seen rave reviews of this book that it's a biography that really has a lot of heart, a lot of grit, lots of blood as well, and lots of heartbreak. So I'm sure I will really, really enjoy this. It's a book that I predict will be 5 stars, but just by reading the synopsis on the back of the book.
Very nice, Ed. And next up I have a book that you absolutely loved in 2022. I think it was your second favourite read of the year.
Yeah.
And it is The House with the Golden Door by Elodie Harper.
It is phenomenal.
So
good.
I read The Wolf Den, which is the first book of this series, and absolutely loved it, and I pushed at Ed and kept just going on and on and on to get you to read it, and eventually I broke you, so you read it, and then you loved it, and then you overtook me and you read the sequel, which I can't allow to stand, obviously. I have to at least catch you up. So friendly brotherly competition. But The House of the Golden Door, I'm really looking forward to reading it. I love The Wolf Den. The character work in particular was outstanding. I love the subtlety. It's as much about what is left unsaid as what is said, and what these characters glean for those they're around, but also what they don't realise about themselves as well. And I love kind of that character realisation and growth, and revelations along the way as well, where it's such a tense and terrifying read, but it's not the usual military fantasy that we read. And yeah, Elodie Harper did a brilliant job in The Wolf Den, and after Ed's praise and just my belief in Elodie Harper's writing, I have no doubt that I'm really going to enjoy The House with the Golden Door.
If it wasn't for Amanda Scott's greatness, then this book would have been my number one book of the year, because it is just phenomenal. It's a phenomenal read that is breathtaking. You really fear for Amara, the central character, and the people around her, and it is full of just, this book is the reason why we read.
Very nice, Ed. And the finale of the trilogy comes out in 2023. So if there's ever a time to start with this series, I recommend you all picking up The Wolf Den.
Definitely.
It's pretty good for beginner historical fiction as well, I would say.
And I would like to read some Western actually written by some indigenous writers and some Native American writers. And one of my favourite writers is Joseph Marshall. And he is a member of the Lakota Oglala band, and his writing is amazing. I love his non-fiction work and his stories about being a medicine man and whatnot. And I also love his historical fiction, where he writes about the very famous character of Crazy Horse. This is a Western series based on the Lakota tribe, and he is writing about someone called Cloud, who is one of Crazy Horse's friends, as Crazy Horse grows up. So I absolutely love it when I read Joseph Marshall's books, and I'm sure this book will be another one that I add to my 5-star list, because his work is absolutely phenomenal. I've loved every book that he's written. I love the way that he really has such an insight, because the way that the First Nations would tell their stories and histories wasn't through scripture or writing. It was through stories, through telling people verbally about these characters, these events as well. And so that's why I think Joseph Marshall has such an affinity as well. He's had all these stories told to him through the elders that he's known as a young man. And I'm sure it's made such a huge impression on him, as that's why he's written these books as well. So I'm really looking forward to reading this, and so should you be as well.
Very nice. I'm really enjoying the kind of breadth that we're talking about here. It's not just kind of in the same subgenre as me too.
Well,
we're quite varied readers, and we're carrying that into historical fiction. So hopefully there's at least one book for you, because we cover quite a wide variety. So yeah, hopefully all of you viewers have at least found one book so far that we've intrigued you by talking about. And so next up, I have the Cicero trilogy by Robert Harris, and there's a read-along currently going along at the Library of Alexandria's channel, otherwise known as Alan. It's just weird to call him Alan. His first name must be Library.
No, his middle name is Boosh.
Boosh. But yeah, the Cicero trilogy, it is renowned. Robert Harris is known as one of the best contemporary historical fiction authors, and the Cicero trilogy, it's not a wild leap of the imagination to guess that it is about the Roman figure of Cicero, who is pretty famed, but it's one of those that you hear about a lot and you recognise the name and kind of what they stood for, but you don't know any of the details.
Yeah,
it's one of those, and so I'm looking forward to kind of, again, what I said earlier, those gaps in my knowledge being filled here, and I'm looking forward to also having a little chat with Alan about it as well. So he's talking about it a lot on his Discord, and I'm a little bit behind because I think they've read Imperium now, which is book 1 of the trilogy, but I will be reading that very, very soon and attempting to catch up.
Very nice. And the next one for me is Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks. This is a book that was given to me as a present at Christmas, and I'm really, really looking forward to reading it. It's something that I don't really read too much about, but it's about, I think it's about a romance that's happening during World War I as well. And it's meant to be phenomenal. I've heard so many people I know have said that this is an amazing book that kind of defies genres. So it's never what it seems. It's never the categories that Amazon might put it in or Goodreads. It's very blending this book. And it's got absolutely rave reviews. I'm really looking forward to reading it. Apparently the characters are phenomenal, and there is so much heart in this story. So I'm a little bit scared to read it, as well as I might cry. When people say there's heart in the story, then you're going to cry.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading that one.
Who got it for you for Christmas, Ed?
That'll be my girlfriend, Sadie.
Very nice. It's a good present, hopefully. Hopefully it makes you cry then.
Yeah,
if it's a gift, yeah, apparently. But next I have Kristen Hanna, her book The Four Winds, and she is a very beloved author, another contemporary historical fiction author, and I believe this is set in the 1920s. It's a lot to do with America, kind of in the Great Depression. Early 30s.
The Dust Bowl.
Because it's, I think the Wall Street crash was that 1929 or maybe
late 20s. Yeah.
It's the Great Depression. And so yes, there's a few years after that, and I know that's a huge theme in the book, and that's basically all I know. But I'm very intrigued by Hannah Christen's writing, and so yeah, that's why I've got it on the list.
Sadie's currently reading it. She said it's amazing. Yeah.
Did you really enjoy it? Is it a lot about the characters, or
It's a lot about
family,
characters.
isn't it?
She does keep saying, she puts it down. She goes, "This is tragic."
Oh no!
Yeah. So good luck. And the last one for
We
me
don't read happy books, do we?
No, we don't. It's Gods and Generals by Jeff Shara, and this series is about the Civil War trilogy. I recently did a video saying I didn't, when we did a video talking about books you want to read this year, this one popped up as well. And I don't know too much about the Civil War. I know little bits in here about documentaries and a few non-fiction books I've read. I'd love to read a book that Joe Abercrombie recommended, which is Shelby Foote's narration of the Civil War, because that's meant to be a monumental, an epic kind of non-fiction telling the story of the Civil War and all those tiny details. It is a period that does fascinate me, and I think the more you dive into it, the more you can find. There are so many golden nuggets that you find in terms of, research as well, the way that people worked, the way that the people were against each other, tactics used, as well as their politics as well. It's a time period that really has it all, and I think Gods and Generals is considered the masterpiece of Civil War historical fiction, so I think it will go down as a favourite book of mine.
Very nice, Ed. Very nice indeed. And now the last book that I'm going to be talking about today is The Yellow Sky Revolt. This is a recommendation I got from the Library of Alexandria's channel. And this is, so me and Ed, we used to play Dynasty Warriors a lot, kind of the Three Kingdoms element of history in China. And the Yellow Sky Revolt is always the first stage of Dynasty Warriors, and it's integral to kind of the factions that arose and fell and all the tragic things that happened after, but the Yellow Sky Revolt acts as kind of a catalyst for that. And so I'm really looking forward to reading this. Apparently the author is writing quite a few different stories kind of on the kind of Three Kingdoms.
Is the author writing now? So
yes, I believe so.
That's cool.
And so yeah, the Yellow Sky Revolt, I'm really looking forward to getting to it.
Dynasty Warriors games were just elite.
They really were, and I would cry at them so much because that story is moving. And but I've never read anything about the history, if be that non-fiction or fiction. So I'm rectifying that mistake. And thank you, Alan, for another recommendation that I'm picking up.
Who was your favourite character to play in Dynasty Warriors?
Oh, Zhao Yun was up there, but Liu Bei, what a man!
You loved the
Guan Yu.
who are the green people?
The Shu, yeah. I didn't think of that straight away. Sun Quan, the type of Zhang Dong.
They're amazing.
I'm butchering the names.
I would always be Lu Bu.
Yeah, well
or Laba.
That says a lot about you. But
I remember playing Dynasty Warriors 2 when it came out on
really?
PS1 or PS2.
Wow.
And there was a level where if you KO'd 1,000 people in that level, then you can unlock Lu Bu as a playable character. It took me like 500 runs, but I did it eventually.
Very nice. That's dedication.
Xiao Dun.
Oh, very nice.
Quality game.
Quality guy.
Yeah, it's class. But anyway, thank you for watching, guys. This is us chatting about historical fiction books that we want to read in 2023. Quite a range there. As you can see, I like my westerns. William's probably a bit more varied, aren't you? But I'm really looking forward to reading all of these books and probably the series, the rest of the series that come after them, because these are all considered amazing books, especially if you look at ratings on Goodreads and Amazon. And, looking at Twitter, I get lots of recommendations from there as well. And I'm sure we're going to have an amazing year of reading.
Very nice. And everyone, please do let us know what historical fiction books you intend to read in 2023. Do you read any historical fiction, or are you just kind of a more fantasy person, as the majority of our channel are? But do you intend to kind of go into that genre a bit more? And are there any other videos you'd like to see on historical fiction from us? Please do let us know, because we'll leap at any opportunity, as I said earlier, to talk about this genre. But everyone, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. Truth and courage.
Truth and courage from the Brothers Gwyn.
The Brothers Gwyn.